Great. Well, hello everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thank you for having us here. My name is Enrique, as introduced. Niklas, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I want to spend the next 30 minutes just giving, I think, the audience a better understanding of what's going on at Delivery Hero. I think it's been very busy for you, particularly since the IPO. A lot of things happening. Maybe just to start with, you can just give us some sense for what's been going on with the company. What's the latest, most recent developments?
So the last thing was that we increased our guidance. So we are beating our revenue expectations. But I think more importantly is what happened to our service. Right now we are faster than we were a year ago. We are a few minutes faster in delivering. We are more affordable, so delivery fees have come down substantially, minimum order value down. We have added another 100,000 restaurants to the platform. And we have also built out new verticals. So right now we are delivering also groceries, pharmaceuticals, flowers, and so on. So a lot have happened. The business has done tremendously well, and the team has done a good job.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I think one of the key themes I pick up in all that is just growth, how much the business is growing in a number of directions. New services, new geographies, just a much broader customer base. And it's obviously one of the key, I think, themes around anything which is related to technology, just how much growth that can drive. And ultimately for someone, or for a business like yours, it drives value creation for employees, for shareholders. Can you just elaborate a bit further? What is driving that growth? You mentioned, you just released revised guidance for the market, growing above 100%. You weren't growing that fast a few quarters ago. What is driving that growth?
So I think a lot is coming back to the core, that we're actually delivering faster, more restaurants, better delivery systems, cheaper. I think that is driving a lot of the growth. But I would be lying if it wouldn't be that we invest more as well. So we also increased the guidance in our investments, that we're going to add another 100 million end of this year into growth initiatives. And the reason for doing that is also partially because that's a promise and commitment we've given to our investors. We have told them that we are going to build leadership in our markets, and therefore we have to also invest in making those investments, making sure that we are the clear leader in the markets we operate.
Right, and those investments they're clearly in the business, so we've seen a lot of focus around improving customer retention, bringing in incremental functionality and new services. There's also, I think, investments in other businesses, which may be complementary in terms of technology or what they may bring. Can you just elaborate further? How do you look at that strategy going forward?
So, yeah, I think generally the service brings a lot of retention of people coming back. And then, of course, we widen the offering. We want to build more loyalty around our service. And having customers coming back that often is also an opportunity for us to cross-sell other services. So I think a lot of the growth is coming from the improved offering as well.
Right. Now, it's interesting because the way this is labeled, it's fast, easy, and to the door delivery, which conceptually Delivery Hero has been kind of delivering on that value proposition for quite some time. Yet it is the kind of the slogan we use for this talk. What has that evolved in any very material way? What are you doing different that you were not doing 3-4 years? Maybe you can give us an example of whether it's the new services or the way you approach the new service to customers.
So yeah, fast and easy was always the mantra, and we want to have a good service. And I think kind of the expectations that we see from consumers is always increasing. So what was fast a couple of years ago was like getting your food or items in 40 minutes. Today, people want to have it in 20 minutes, and that means a lot of innovation on the cooking, on the technology, the route, the logistics. And today, if I give you an example, we deliver groceries in below 10 minutes in some markets. So that means you want to order groceries, the time you hit order, it will be at the doorstep below 10 minutes. So when people think that Amazon is fast, they should come to us.
Fast. Absolutely. Now, one of the things when I talk to founders, entrepreneurs like yourself, I find they spend most of their time on is in managing the growth from an organizational perspective. You've got over 19,000 employees, which pretty much, I think, anecdotally is the equivalent to the attendance of this conference all round, including the satellite events. So that's a massive number of people with great diversity at a global footprint. How do you go about managing growth from that perspective and growing the business from a kind of human resource perspective, talent, culture?
Oh, so that's one of the hardest things that we do to remain and build that culture. And I think if you include the rider community, we have more than 100, 200,000 people working for us today. So managing that culture is a key thing. And I think what we've been very good at is that we kept this entrepreneurial vibe. We have been able to attract the best entrepreneurial leaders. And we have given them also a lot of autonomy to be entrepreneurs and to be able to innovate and improve. And I think those leaders have spread this positive drive, moving impact, and I think that has driven our culture. But it's also something that's top of my mind, always making sure that I stay true to our values and making sure that my leaders stay true to the values and so on. And I think we've been very fortunate and happy to have such a positive working spirit.
Right. Well, you must be doing a good job. I think last time I checked on Glassdoor, you had a 92% approval rating from your employee base. So clearly something is working well there. Now, I wanted just to change a bit the direction of the discussion. You do operate in an incredibly competitive environment, which in many ways makes it even more impressive, the success you've had in growing the business. And these are in some cases very large competitors. How do you think about the competitive landscape of how it's evolved and how much of a challenge is that for how you think about executing on your strategy?
So, yeah, I think we have the fortune to work with some of the best competitors in the world, and we compete against indirectly or directly against Amazon and Uber and others, and I think they are incredibly good. It puts the bar very high, and I think it makes us work faster and better. I think what we do differently, and probably why we've had an edge towards them, is that we're built on this strong local entrepreneurship, where we can attract the better leaders, I believe, because they have the autonomy and freedom to also take entrepreneurial decisions. So I think we've been better at finding this balance of local, strong entrepreneurs, as well as centrally also building a very strong tech for supporting that. So while we give a lot of autonomy, we also try to do things right together as one central platform. And I think that's a dynamic and mix that we've done really well, both from technology as organizational setup, and I think that has given us a lead and a clear edge towards them. And also why I do truly believe that we today have a better service. But we are paranoid about being outpaced, not necessarily by size or by growth, but by product and the service that we're offering. And therefore, I think if it's slowed down, they will copy and overtake. So therefore, we whatever is good today is not good tomorrow. And we have to be very, very good to keep the lead.
Keeps you on your toes for sure. Now, they've, as you said, right, they keep you on your toes. They do a lot of innovation. One of the themes that we seem to be seeing develop is around a number of consumer internet-focused models is also how is that value proposition monetized with the consumer? And in many ways, you mentioned Amazon. They were a bit of a pioneer in how they operated around Prime and using Prime, which is effectively more of a subscription-type model within that ecosystem. Do you see that hitting more directly the way food delivery is monetized by the various operators? Is that something which is kind of top of mind for you?
So it is. I think on the one hand, subscription is just another incentive for users to feel like they have a core product that they want to stick their loyalty towards. But in the end, we also have to be loyal to by building also the best service. I think most important is that we keep a good service. Otherwise, no one would want to subscribe. But of course, we also build this subscription service. And as a part of a good subscription service, we also need more than just food. And that's why we have the pharmaceutical and groceries and other verticals where consumers can come to our place and actually find more than just their hot takeaway. And that is something that we push a lot in a lot of markets. And I think it very well combines with our subscription offer. And we see that our loyal customers are loyal also in those verticals. Yeah.
So it goes, I guess what you're saying is it does go hand in hand as the services evolve, as the customer needs also evolve over time. You then adapt the way you kind of, the more economic or commercial relationship with the customer.
And we see that our customers come back very frequent to our service.
Right.
So today we make something like 50+ million orders a month from a large, but not in comparison to a Facebook large number of users. So we do a lot of transaction per customer. A lot of customers come back every week and order, or even more frequently. And that relationship is very important. It's also very valuable because it enables us to have a storefront for many other services where they can try out groceries, as an example.
And in that respect, just as an extension to that, you obviously operate at a very global scale across pretty much all continents. Do you see the customer needs evolving differently, and therefore the way you develop new products, new services across different geographies, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it's in Europe or Latin America, in a different way because of the different customer needs?
Yeah, we have to be very local in what we're offering, and it's very different what someone in Latin America wants versus Middle East versus Asia versus Europe. So we have to adopt what we're offering, but also the business model that we're using. So in some markets, we use existing grocery stores. In other markets, we build up a lot of warehouses. So I think there are markets with more than 50 warehouses in one city. So we're building up those small micro warehouses so that we can be fast in providing our service.
Right.
So, but very different market to market.
Okay. And as you think, maybe just one last question on the competitive environment. As you look forward, is there an off chance here that somebody comes left field, to really change the way the competitive dynamics are playing out? And I ask because we've seen someone like Uber who really started more on the mobility side and then extended with the development of Uber Eats into food delivery. Is there any other angle to the business that you see, would eventually result in someone coming in new? Or for now, you think it's pretty stable?
Well, no. I would expect there would be a lot of left field, a lot of innovation, maybe people here coming up with ideas how they can innovate the food space. Obviously, we also try to stay ahead by doing a lot of experiments and trying out things ourselves. We also do a lot of investments into companies. We have done tens of investments into food or food-related or payment-related companies to making sure that we stay ahead, we understand what's going on in the market, and if we are not building it, at least we're participating in someone else building it. But I think we could expect there will be a lot of changes and disruption. It's very hard to foresee what happens in the 10, 15, 20 years. And I think a lot will happen and change. And that's why I think when it comes down to it, the only thing that really matters is the team and the organization that you're building. That's your product. That's the product you have at hand. And that's what's going to make you successful or not in the long term, because the business model and service is going to change.
Right. You mentioned before the company values and the culture values, and local is not a value per se, but one aspect of how you empower local people to succeed. How would you otherwise define beyond that the company values? What are the things that attract your employee base the most about how you go about doing business?
So that's of course different from business to business, and we attract a certain type. We attract people who have a lot of drive, who want to change, who want to learn, who want to test the limits with high ambition, who are entrepreneurs. They want ownership. Which is also reflected in our values, which are 3 values. There is one which is we deliver solution, because that's what we do. The second one is aim higher, so we want people to always try to get better. Every day we try to get a little bit better. And the third is that we are heroes because we care. And I think that's also very significant in our company. It's a very, we want to move fast, but we also want to make sure that we stay very nice to each other, that we're helpful and that we're supportive. And that's a value that I subscribe to a lot myself. That's the most important value for me, that we always keep in mind that we are great colleagues and build a great work environment.
And just building on that, actually, I know personally for you and also for the company, the social impact is something which is very much top of mind, and you've talked about it in the past. Can you just maybe elaborate how you think about that aspect of your strategy and your business?
Yeah. So I think for me it became clear a few years ago that what I want to get, I don't know, what I want to be remembered for and what I want to be part of. I think in the beginning it was just a survival, making sure that the business actually get money such that it can pay its cost and employees and so on. But over time I realized it's not enough to build a really cool service and a business model that works, but also something that I can be proud of to my kids. I have 2 of them. So when they get in 15 and 20, I want them to look back at what I've built and also be proud of what their dad achieved. So therefore it becomes a core pillar of our strategy as well, which is the social side. One is of course around carbon footprint. It's a topic that is very deep in my mind, and where we try to be a carbon neutral or carbon positive company. Including all deliveries and packaging and so on. It's a very challenging goal, but we're doing really well. And I think this year we're already in Europe going to be carbon positive, but then over time also globally. We work a lot on investments into companies like packaging. So we did a multi-million investment into Biolution. It's a packaging company that is sustainable packaging. We invested in a company called Impossible Food, which is around meat or supplement to meat, because it also has a big carbon footprint, what we're eating there. So we also invest outside our own ability to have a positive impact there. I think the other is that we eat, we consume a lot of food, and therefore we also want to be giving back in terms of food. So we also have a giving back program where making sure that millions of people will be getting food. So this year is more than 1 million. Next year is going to be more than 10 times more. Are going to be a goal that we can actually provide meals to. Then a third pillar of the strategy is around not only being a good company outside of Delivery Hero, but also inside Delivery Hero. Yeah. And therefore diversity and inclusion is also a third pillar where we try to build a very inclusive and diverse work environment, because that's the environment you want to work in.
Got it. And we've talked about growth, we've talked about talent, we've talked about social impact. As you think about the business, is there one thing which has a disproportionate or takes a disproportionate amount of your time in terms of just what you find maybe the more challenging part of the business? Or is it really just working across all these different areas?
I think it's across all areas, but again, it comes back to people. Like if you see your team as the product and developing that, everything else gets solved. All the great ideas will come up through the teams, and everything that is going to be built is going to be built by the team. It's all about organization and team and making sure that they all drive in the same direction, and making sure that we hire the best and the best people to work with.
Got it. Before we go to some of the questions we're getting from the audience, just maybe one last question from me. So, for people out there, people who are looking for a job, potential partners, who should think about coming to you to Delivery Hero? Who what sort of talent, what sort of partners would you like to attract?
Yeah, so we do, on the one hand, a lot of investments. So anyone who's building on food concepts, anything related to food or payments, which is also an area where we look into a lot. We have made a lot of investments. There are few who have done as many investments as us in that field. So therefore, I think we can be a very good partner there. We like those companies to have a little bit of traction, but it can be fairly early, and it can also be quite late in the process, the stage. Most important is that it's a team that really proves that it can have traction and has this entrepreneurial spirit that we do, because we like to make it so much larger in order to have an impact, and therefore we need those great entrepreneurs with big ambitions. Then I think with people, we look for an incredible number of people. If you look only in Berlin, we look for several hundred people, unfilled positions. And in particular in tech, where we look for hundreds of people into our tech team there. So anyone who likes to build really cool tech, because we do, then I think we are a very cool place to be. I think we are still very early. We, as I mentioned, we do 50 million plus orders per month, but we also grow in a very fast pace. So we 50 to 100% pace. And I think we can be 10, 20 times larger and be one of the big consumer technology companies globally over the next 10 to 15 years. So anyone who wants to be part and have an impact and be part of a good team, they should come to us. And yeah, and I think for those of you who wants to see a little bit inside Delivery Hero, we have a TOA satellite event tomorrow when we will show our logistics technology, search, discovery, so some really cool technology around machine learning, around logistic optimizations. So anyone is invited there to our office to see it firsthand.
I'm sure you'll have a lot of takers. Maybe just go to a couple of questions coming from the audience. One of the more popular questions from what I can see is just elaborating a bit more why people come to your service. So when people come to Delivery Hero as opposed to one of your competitors, I think you touched on it briefly, but maybe just comment a bit more. What's differentiated about the service you provide?
I think it's all about the small details. So it's if someone can deliver something in 5 minutes faster, it's a little bit lower minimum order value, delivery fees, if you have more restaurants, if you have the best restaurants. And I think I don't know, user interface and so on. So there are all those small pieces that makes the service and makes the difference to the service. So that's what we try to do better. And when we do that better, you also get a more loved brand. So you get a brand that people love the experience. And as long as you kind of surprise the expectation of our customers, which are getting ever harder to do, they love your product. And over time, they get used to it, and that becomes the norm. So you have to continue to find ways of surprising them on the positive, and that makes a big difference between the competitors.
Got it. Thank you. One other question coming up is more around sustainability. It's just, you've touched a little bit on the social impact of the business, but more broadly in terms of eating patterns, how food delivery has been evolving. Do you think that's a sustainable way forward?
Yeah, I think you can make it sustainable. And I don't know, people eat today, and they will continue to eat. So, but of course, we can help on the education. We can make it better. We can make it at least more transparent, what is in there and what's not. We can make sure that the packaging, not only for our deliveries, but for all deliveries that's happening with those restaurants that we partner with, making sure that they take away the non-sustainable packaging. So we have a big impact, or we can make a big impact. And I think it would be very sad if we cannot really double down and make that impact. I think also when we look at delivery, we do a lot of deliveries also through bicycles, such that also the transportation is sustainable. There are also other ways of electric and so on. We try to minimize delivery distances instead of having one restaurant delivering 7 kilometers that direction and one doing 7 in that direction, because that's what's happening today. We try to find ways of incentivize the user to order from smaller delivery distances, and then you might speak about 200 meters. So therefore, you can minimize also the economic footprint by just making very small. So therefore, in effect, you go into a restaurant is going to be less sustainable than actually the other way around, and that's what we want it to be.
Okay. Maybe just last couple of questions. One, just more around strategy, which is just how do you think about expansion more broadly going forward? You are present in, I think it's 35, 40 countries already. Is it about more countries, or is it about growing in those countries? How do you think about the expansion going forward?
Yes, we are operating 42, 43 or so markets or countries. That's a lot. And we have some very tough competitors with billions in their pocket, and they only fight with one area. So therefore, for us, it's most important that we make sure that we don't bite off too much and start adding more to it, but rather build us deeper there. And we see in most markets we can grow 10, 15, 20, 30 times on the existing service by just improving it, making it better, cheaper, building out kitchens, making it more affordable, building a better service. So therefore the focus is clearly there. Having said that, there could always be one or two markets that we're too tempted not to enter, but the focus is clearly on existing markets.
Existing markets. Maybe just to end it slightly, we may a bit more personal question, which I saw popped up, which is interesting, which is how do you deal with the emotional stress of the day-to-day of the business? And I think as they say, same as with children, you've got two children, as children grow, the problems also grow bigger. It seems like with business it's quite similar. How do you cope with all that?
I think as an entrepreneur, you have the hard way of learning. You learn to deal with stress. But I think for me, it's probably been worse in the beginning as we build up and the stress there, and I start learning and I start finding methods and solutions for it. One is that you're making sure that you surround yourself with really good people. That will help your stress level, people that you can actually share your problems and they find a solution for it. Another way of solving stress for me was to change my own perception of what a good leader should be. So I had this view that a good leader should be X, Y, and Z, and now I have to live up to X, Y, and Z because that's what a good leader should do. And I changed that to be I am who I am, and I have my weakness, I have my strength, and I just am who I am. And if that's not good enough, it's not good enough, and I can pretend to be something else, but I'm at my best when I'm myself. And therefore, I changed that to try to be myself at my best and my worst. And I think that has worked well for me, at least. And then do sports and eat well helps a lot as well.
Great. Well, listen, I think we're getting towards the end of our time. Anything you want to comment? It hasn't come up in some of the questions. Otherwise, we're probably going to bring it to a wrap.
Not really. Thanks everyone for being here. As I said, I think it's a great company. Please tell your friends. We look for a lot of people. We look for to be a very good company. So
authentic, driven.
Correct.
Looking for that. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Niklas.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.